Instead, it's Friedman. That was great. I love that because you hear the opening strains, the guitar licks. You think it's Cult of Personality, and suddenly it's MJF yanking your chain. I like that. And off his music switches to his, and here he comes. So, you, Mr. Music Business Background, I know that the music that Punk came out to was what he used years ago in Ring of Honor. But what is the song and who is the artist?
I forget the song name. It's AFI. It was actually a great album. I have that album when it came out. I used to play it all the time. I had the girl I used to know who liked that album, and she got me into that album. It's a great album, and he used to come out to that song, which is, I think, the first song on the album. I just don't know the name of it.
Who is AFI?
They be a band that played music similar to the music you heard on the... I don't know how to describe them. They were a band, I guess you could say maybe emo-ish, goth-ish. They were going through a lot of issues, and they made a lot of good songs.
Well, anyway, he changed it up a little bit, and they mentioned it for the folks who didn't understand why it was different music. They mentioned what it was. So not the, again, I didn't hear the song title, but they said that it was Ring of Honor's or Punk's old Ring of Honor music. Anyway, from the time that they came out and they're standing in the ring, both guys' facials are great. Their attitude, their demeanor, as the Fink used to say. During the in-ring introductions, to give it a big match feel, like a sporting event. And not just this, here he comes down now the aisle to his custom-made music, doing his pre-choreographed routine. But they're in the ring, it's a fucking match, it's a fight. And both these guys know how to, especially Punk, obviously, just because of his experience, know how to command your attention while they're either not doing much or not doing anything. Because the way they walk around with attitude and expression on their face and the body language for the people in the big arena that can't see their expressions. And they took their time. That was the longest fucking chain I've ever seen in a chain match. And I thought that might give them troubles, but they seem to. I got to be honest, even guys who have had some chain matches have issues more often with the chain than what I saw them have in this match. A couple of times they were, if you step over the wrong rope, you got to go back in and back out because you're wound around and all that stuff, and that just happens. But they didn't have a lot of trouble as compared to some I've seen. But usually it's like an 8-foot chain or a 10-foot chain. This thing, when they each had their backs to the turnbuckle, it pretty much reached. So anyway, it just from the start of it, they took their time. Everything meant something. They didn't, the first time that MJF whipped Punk with the chain, he just did it once and Punk sold it. And you could see it left marks. It left link marks on his back. MJF wrapped the chain around his hand and punched Punk twice, just twice. And he was bleeding. And by the way, my new favorite magician is not Chris Angel, it's CM Punk. Chris Angel has nothing on Punk. He's got the magic touch. Did you see it? I ain't going to talk about it.
I didn't see it. Obviously, I saw Mr. Friedman, as you called him before, but I did not see Mr. Punk.
No, you didn't see Mr. Friedman because we didn't either. He disappeared for 45 seconds. But anyway, yes, Punk's got the magic touch. Did you hear when MJF got the microphone and told Punk to quit and Punk said, "Eat shit"? JR came in and like it. That's the Vince line, right? Did you catch that?
I did catch that. And once again, I thought the commentators were a little over the top and took away from this match at times.
Well, but I like that little callback too. Learn to eat shit and like the taste of it, pal. I liked when Punk jerked MJF off the buckle, headbutt in the nuts. Punk does the bulldog with the chain. And Punk's color was really coming. He was fucking great. And he's whipping MJF with the thing. Punk goes for the GTS, the go to sleep. MJF gets the sleeper with the chain around the neck. and Punk's fading and the people are chanting. And then the kick off the buckle, quick 2 count. This is wrestling. Again, they traded. MJF got the armbar. Punk rolled into the Anaconda Vice. Anaconda. Your Anaconda don't want none. MJF gets out by pulling hair. Imagine that. The knee lift to the chain, or with the chain, was where we were just talking about. MJF takes a bump to the floor. And I know he's young and inexperienced, and I felt the same way when I was doing it first time on TV. But I don't know what he was doing. The camera was on Punk in the ring for 30 seconds. And then finally MJF got in. I love him, but he's still working on that home magic kit for kids thing he used to order out of the back of the comic books. Who was it? Marshall Brodine's Magic Tricks. But anyway, then they go out to the floor. Now they're out on the floor. They're giving us a little bit of everything. It's not 100 miles an hour. It's not overkill of everything. It's not back and forth with no selling. They're having a fucking fight. And Punk bashes MJF not from pillar to post, but pillar to steps. And then goes for the knee lift into the steps and hurts his leg. That's going to play a part in this. This may be the first gimmick match in AEW history that has made sense. Punk calls for the go to sleep, but his leg is bad and he collapses. And then they fought on the apron. That's where they got tied up in the chain, where MJF had to bop in and out a time or two to get out, tied up out of the ropes. The reverse tombstone on the apron. I hate apron spots. And I don't want to downplay the danger of this one, but if you're going to do this, was a controlled situation. The guys that are jumping off the top rope or flinging each other on these aprons, that's not a controlled situation. This was controlled, and both of them sold it like death. So a lot of these things in a blow-off match, that's where you want to do them. And if we didn't see them every week, they would have even more impact. Then we get to the part, it couldn't be perfect. And I gotta, right now, I was vibrating. I was hopping up and down. I was even backing some stuff up to watch it again. And then MJF goes under the ring and pulls out a bag, and it's thumbtacks. And seriously, come on, guys, and I'm just talking to the two of you now. You're two of the best talents in the business currently. You're having a classic match on a major pay-per-view. This bullshit was completely unnecessary. It's just validates the goof and the garbage match participants, constituents, and it encourages every jack-off wannabe mud show fuck with a 1/100th of your talent that this is somehow a thing that actual real wrestlers and real stars do. And it's stupid. And it ain't going to win anybody anything. It's fucking stupid. Did I mention that word? And they teased falling the tacks, and then MJF superplexed Punk on the tacks. And this ran a risk of ruining this fucking classic for me, because why? It's like watching your children take up doing fucking hard drugs. Why? It's so unnecessary. And now they've ruined a lot of the ring for bumps. I took the bump off the scaffold. I would do that again before I would just take a bump in thumbtacks. Not only for money, but just because it's stupid. Anyway, somehow MJF got unhooked there. I didn't see how it was, but he called for Wardlow several times. And finally, here comes Wardlow. And this is where the floor camera was behind Wardlow. And I could see, because I then later on went back and looked, he starts feeling, because MJF is screaming for the ring. Well, he starts feeling for the ring. The floor camera was behind him. You couldn't see it good. So the floor camera starts to truck around Wardlow's left side, and just as you can start seeing it, that's where, I think it was Tony, but it may have been excrement too. Oh, he can't find it. great if we'd have seen that for ourselves before you called it. He hadn't gotten the idea over yet that he couldn't really find it to anybody but the guys who had been in the finish meeting, apparently, and knew that it was going to take place. Anyway, couldn't find the ring. So Punk took that opportunity to hit the GTS on MJF. And then MJF fell into the tacks and did a funny, back arch type of thing. That wasn't the right reaction there. You don't want it funny. The tacks are screwing everything up. But then Punk looks at Wardlow, and Wardlow looks at Punk, and Wardlow finds the ring and leaves it on the apron to a huge pop and walks off. And Punk gets the ring and grabs MJF and gives him the finger. MJF spits in his face. Punk nails him with the ring one time, 1, 2, 3. If there had been a shortage of thumbtacks in the United States of America on the day of this match, this would have been the closest thing to a perfect gimmick match that I've seen in years. Your thoughts, Brian?
I agree with some of your criticisms. Hated the thumbtacks. Hated the commentary. In terms of the two participants, I thought took me out of it for a second when Punk started using the chain. And just the way he was working it, it didn't look the greatest.
Well, I saw that also. And if you notice, here's the thing. They're using a real chain.
Right.
And if you go back and watch, Punk had pulled it for where he thought he was going. And MJF anticipated and bowed his back down a little bit. And the first one especially, it was like it didn't quite get there. But yeah, there was a couple of MJFs looked better on Punk, and we saw the marks on Punk, so for good reason. But yeah, I got you there.
But I thought it was great. I think this entire feud has been the example of what a lot of people like me want wrestling today to be like, and we don't understand why there isn't a full-time promotion that just treats things seriously. This feud was great. Give it to Punk. He got great color twice in 1 week. Who was the last guy in the business to do that? Used to be all the time, and then all of a sudden it went away.
Yeah.
Wednesday, and again on Sunday, great color. Hate to say it, but I hope you bleed a lot more, CM Punk. But really good, and, they did the 2 matches. Punk wins the second one. It almost feels like it's not the time to do a third match. It feels like it is the time maybe to move on with MJF and Wardlow. I don't know what you do with Punk.
Well, no, now I agree. I had said beforehand, if it was me, I would have had MJF win the first 2 and then Punk win the blow off. After this, they can't blow anything else off. This was so good. And it was an ultimate, fucking finisher. And they've got the right turn for Punk to make, or for MJF to make rather, so he doesn't just go out a loser. He'll say, I'll deal with Punk on my time, but Wardlow, and that he gives him a graceful exit out of the thing. So in this, but I would have had another match of some description that didn't have the heavy, dog collar, end all be all, whatever. But no, I agree with you now. They must move on.
This feud has been so well done. It's been so intelligently done. And now we're going into whatever Punk's going to do. And I have a lot of faith in CM Punk's quality control. I have a lot of faith, maybe more than almost anyone in wrestling right now. And I have to say, since the Jericho feud, everything MJF has been a part of has made sense and been great. And this feud is the greatest in AEW's history and maybe the best in wrestling in years. It gives me a lot of faith going into MJF Wardlow. And that makes me want to ask you the question, seeing the crowd reactions he's starting to get, seeing what he could do in the ring on a limited basis as a heel, just killing people with the powerbomb. But seeing how the MJF Punk program was booked and how things made sense and how people react to MJF a certain way, you got to think Wardlow's about to come out of this a major star.
Oh, yeah, they're into him and they love him and they love the power bombs and they loved the couldn't find the ring, and they've been wanting this for a while since they've juiced it up again. Remember, they were teasing us 2 years ago, and if they'd have did it then, Jesus, because they had only been together for 6 weeks. So thankfully, they put it on the back burner, and then established some history between these guys. And obviously, we're not going to see Wardlow and MJF right off. We'll get Wardlow and Spears. So here comes the power bombs. And maybe MJF can, certainly not FTR. I hope that group is dissolved at this point. But maybe MJF can get a couple of other people to feed to Wardlow. And then, again, the first match with MJF and Wardlow, that's got to be Wardlow's first loss. Because if then he beats MJF, well, then why go any further? But that means that they have to just give Wardlow, put something in his bank account first, not just beating job guys, but actually beating people close to or doing the bidding of MJF and getting closer to him. And then, boom, MJF fucks him and sets him back, and then he's got to get on the comeback trail, blah, blah, blah.
And I guess what happened, because he won the ladder match, he gets the winner of Sammy versus Scorpio Sky for the TNT title.
Yeah, what did I say, the world title earlier? It's one of their many titles. and does MJF somehow piss in his post toasties over that one? Do you want to put the belt on him right now? Or how he still actually hasn't come out of under MJF's contractual obligation, that contract. And here's something, somebody on Twitter said, Tony Khan can spend $40 million for Ring of Honor, but he can't buy poor Wardlow out of his contract with MJF.
That's true.
See, when you start doing this shit where all your loopholes aren't closed and your logic doesn't make sense from one segment or talent to another, this is where people start asking these questions. Having said that, why was CM Punk and MJF not the main event? Because I looked and I said, fucking hell, we've got half this show to go. How are they any of them going to follow this? Right? And most of them didn't.